So Victoria's Secret is fanning a flame, whether it be lust, perhaps, for men, or envy for women, or whatever that is. But then the church says, here's more doctrine. We're going to douse that flame when that flame is over here, right? It's truly an honor to be here and sharing with you guys from God's Word. I guess now more than a couple months ago, I was actually at Chick-fil-A. I often like to do my work in the place that I'm writing my work about. So I like to kind of be out in public and culture when I'm doing, like, writing up talks and things like that. And so one time I actually decided to spend the afternoon at Chick-fil-A for whatever reason, and there I am just working away. And a few booths away from me were several young gentlemen, right? Probably in the third, fourth year of high school. And as you guys know, Chick-fil-A is actually owned by Christians, right? Dan Cathy, he's at the head of the company, and it's very much a Christian company in that sense. They don't open on Sundays, but any other day you're there, you can hear Christian, like, praise music coming through the speakers all the time, right? So one of the three young gentlemen picked up on this, and he started singing along. And then he goes to his friend next to him. He's like, oh, these are Christian songs. They just don't play the lyrics, right? So he's enjoying himself, singing along. And it must have been the case that his friend next to him said, oh, yeah, I know. And they were kind of talking about church and how often they go, where do they go to church and all that. And then eventually they asked the third guy across, they're like, hey, their friend, hey, do you go to church? Oh, no, how come not more often, and so on and so forth. And so I thought about that, and I thought, you know what? Look, this is neat. That reification thing that I talked about this morning, which is basically if we bring out truth, goodness, and beauty through airwaves or through social media or through every area that we're called to be in, then world change is around the corner. I thought, look, a soul salvation is around the corner. So there you're at Chick-fil-A, right? And the idea is, if we just had more Lecrae Moores, as it were, Curtin Clayshaws, Tori Kellys, or Steph Curry's, who comes out there twice, right, because he's on a Lecrae's concert there, then world change is about to happen. Like a soul salvation because of songs playing in a restaurant was just around the corner. So I was very pleased, right? I was like, oh, this is amazing. God is working even just through this like an instrumental song, right? But sure enough, after a few short, I was minding my own business, and then a few short minutes later, a couple of the guys, I guess, they were talking along, and they started cussing a lot, right? A lot of profanity coming from that booth, and I was like, oh man. And I didn't want to be rude. I just wanted to double check, kind of without being conspicuous. I wanted to check if it were the other guys or if it was the guy who was actually singing the praise songs, right? So I did look, trying not to be too conspicuous, and sure enough, like, it was all of them. They're just kind of going at it, right? And so at this point, you might say, well, you might judge me. You might be saying, oh, but that's just how high schoolers speak these days, you're just an old fogey, right? Well, here's the thing. I don't think I can be an old fogey because, to be honest, as a fogey, I actually remember saying those words myself when I was probably more like middle school. And I can't be that old because I actually remember saying them, right? So I get that. But importantly for our talk this afternoon, from the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And what we say impacts what we behave. And so that's what I want to talk about this morning, is that yes, world change or transforming culture, but also transforming our hearts. But the transformation of our hearts sometimes comes from the outside in. And that's what I want to speak on a little bit this morning, is what does that look like? What is transformation from the outside in? And so to think about this morning, if I can actually ask you to stand with me as we read and revere God's word. Please be seated. Thank you. So to talk about transformation of the heart, there are three things I think we need to kind of figure out here, right? Kind of talk through. And the first thing is we have to understand this myth of a rationalist anthropology, okay? Forgive me, I teach at a Christian college, and so some of these words are going to be like, oh, what? I felt like I'm back in college again. But we're going to break this down real simple. The second thing is we need to appreciate our embodied reality. In other words, that we have bodies, and that's a good thing. Like, God didn't just create human souls, he created human bodies, and he created them good. So our bodies matter to our spirituality. And then the third thing is liturgy. Like, we're thinking, wait a second, we don't talk about that too much in an evangelical church. But I do think there's a real sense in which liturgy is very important for us, not just for Roman Catholics. I think it's important for us as evangelicals. So we'll talk about these three things as we go along. So, the myth of a rationalist anthropology. What's the idea? Human beings have a certain way of being. We have a certain nature to ourselves, right? And it's true for everything in the world if you think about it, natural things at least. For example, think of fruits. Think of an orange perhaps in particular. An orange will always be an orange, right? For example, they will always taste a certain way. They will always exhibit the same color, namely orange, right? And they'll always fall to the ground when they're ripe, or they'll be picked right before they're ripe so they can be sold at grocery stores and whatnot, right? That's the nature of an orange. Or think of animals, right? Think of the animals of like a cat, for example, or like a shark or a bear. Like cats, they start off as kittens, they meow, their whole life, right? And then they grow bigger, right? They have a fascinating way of climbing up trees, but they fall and they have 9 lives. And, that's just the life of a cat, right? They also have this other particular gift of annoying all other living creatures. I don't know. That's my view of cats. I'm just saying, like, if you're a cat lover, we can still be friends. Not good friends, though. But, anyways, that's just how I view cats, right? Whatever. But the nature of a cat will always be the nature of a cat. So it is with human persons. We have a certain way of being. We're born, we start off as babies, we develop psychologically and physically, we learn and change, and that's the part I want to key in on. We learn and change a certain way, and then we, get older, we engage in professional activities, we give back to the next generation, and we pass away, right? That's the nature of human persons, but that part of how do human persons learn and actually change? The Christian word would be for sanctification, right? So how do Christians actually make progress in our sanctification? How do we, unlike those young gentlemen at Chick-fil-A, by the way, I forgot this part of the story. It got really bad at one point. There was an older gentleman who walked by their booth. He kind of muttered something under his breath. I couldn't hear it. But the guy, as soon as he went to the bathroom, the guys were livid. They were just going at it. I mean, I've never heard so many words like that spoken in all one instance, right? So they were upset. And so how do we get in a place such that we can absorb a rude word like that? How do we fight against the anger that we sometimes feel in our lives? And I think it's by a certain way that we learn and change. Now, for a long time, and I'm truly a part of this in that sense, pastors, theologians, Christian thinkers, we all probably have come to a point we thought, you know what? The way we learn and change is through worldview. It's through theology, right? Now, and I think that's partly right. I mean, obviously, that's my job. I get paid to teach at a Christian university. I believe in the importance of doctrine, right? Doctrines drive our deeds. Our beliefs change our behavior. Now, there's a lot of truth to that, 100%. But I actually think there's another part of the equation that we're missing out on, and that is specifically to do with our hearts and our bodies, actually, not just our minds. What I'm saying is actually reflected in what this gentleman said. There's a gentleman named Jamie Smith. He teaches out at Calvin College, right, out in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And Jamie Smith, he's a friend of the church, okay? He's a Christian, right? But I have this quote from his book called Desiring the Kingdom. It's a very telling title there, Desiring the Kingdom. And he has kind of a long quote, which I've excerpted here over the next couple slides, but it's worth reading, okay? So here's what he's saying. He says, the church often adopts a misguided strategy. While the mall, Victoria's Secret, and Jerry Bruckheimer are grabbing hold of our gut, our heart, our cardia, by means of our body and its senses, right? And what does he mean? Like specifically, he says through stories and images, sights and sound, commercial version of smells and bells. Smells and bells is another word for liturgy, right? It's like the smell of a candle or the sound of a bell. So they have figured out, the mall and Victoria's Secret and CSI, whatever, they figured out how to create followers. They found out how to create worshipers. And then Jamie Smith actually goes on and analogizes. He says, like the mall is kind of like a temple. You walk in and it's a different space. And the smells that you have. I mean, how many times have you guys walked by a store, and I won't even name the store, you probably know it. You're not even like thinking about it, but like you're 25 feet away and you're like, it's here. Like you could smell the store. And don't we realize actually that marketers are the best social psychologists that there are? Like they have figured out, like literally if you're walking near there, all of a sudden you're like, I need to buy cargo shorts. I need to buy some stuff that makes me feel like a surfer. Like all of a sudden you feel that way, and because the smell, don't you think that the smell is like sea breeze mixed with like suntan lotion and a little bit of sweat? Like that's the smell that's in that cologne. Because they figured out how to get us to feel like, oh, if I wear this, if buy this, I feel like a surfer. Or if I wear that, or if she wears that, then she'll see me as a surfer. And so there's a sense, whereas the church's response, so they figured out how to get worshipers, whereas the church's response is oddly rationalist. Okay, here's where he's heading with this. Check out the next part of it. While the mall appreciates that we are desiring animals, the Protestant church in general still tends to see us as minds, just minds. So while secular liturgies, he calls them liturgies, right, are after our hearts, the church thinks it only has to get into our heads, right? I like this part of the quote. It's very powerful. He says this. He says, while Victoria's Secret is fanning a flame in our cardia, the church is trucking water to our minds, right? So Victoria's Secret is fanning a flame, whether it be lust, perhaps, for men, or envy for women, or whatever that is. But then the church says, here's more doctrine. We're going to douse that flame when that flame is over here, right? And so the end of it is this. While secular literatures are enticing us with affective images of a good life, the church is trying to convince us otherwise by depositing ideas. Such a rationalist response is inadequate and mistargeted because it continues to assume a flawed anthropology. And what's that anthropology? An overly rationalist anthropology. One that says, look, if we just get more ideas in your heads, you're going to change and become holier. Whereas actually it needs to go through the heart. Now, again, trust me, I obviously believe the mind matters, right?